Power issues, please have your kids in the disc and the shot spend the bulk of their time, especially early in the season, in non-reverse. I'd say the number one killer of power is leaving the ground too early. You cannot create power unless you have your feet on the ground. My best analogy that I can come up with for us upper Midwesterners is this, is if we ran out of gas, we go out and someone's out of gas and it's icy out, the gas station is half a block away. We're throws coaches, we could probably push that car on dry ground to the parking lot, or to the gas station. If the ground's icy, as hard as we can push with our arms, if our feet are slipping, it doesn't matter how hard I push with my arms, I can't produce power and get it to transfer into the car starting to roll. So once my feet aren't touching the ground, I can throw with momentum, but I can't make any more power. It's probably the number one thing that we just need to get kids to understand. We understand it as coaches, searching for the magic bullet, keeping them on the ground, keeping them, trying to push the ground away from them, all the things that I've kind of made up in my head to try to communicate that to kids over the years, and I'm sure you have some good ones too. And then slow them down too. I think speed needs to, not only within the throw, build from slow to fast. You know, this is all about the velocity at release, not about the velocity of our head on the first turn, which is what most kids make it about. Slow to fast, but then also get the whole system to slow down early on. I would much rather take good positions in a good movement with the tempo of the rhythm slower in March and throw that same positions and movements with a faster tempo in May than to throw fast, which might allow me to throw far, hit terrible positions, and do that over and over again in March and April. You'll spend May very frustrated or plateaued or going backwards. And so get them to slow down pretty quick. So what do we do with this video once we take it? Like I said, my returning varsity kids, I do a video analysis and I send them back. Hey, here's some big ideas for us this offseason. After the meet, do you have kids who do not want to see their video when it goes poorly? I don't want to see it, coach. I know what I did wrong. Those are the kids you probably need to see the video the most. But then you got to sneak up on that politely, like, hey, you know what? Just stop by my room before practice today. I just want to show you one thing before you go out for your warm-up. Rather than sending it to them at night and saying, they watching it before they go to bed. Now 2 people aren't sleeping, right? Let your kid get the rest, and you toss and turn about how you're going to fix it. You all know those kids that probably need different amounts of stimulus. There are kids that I'll send video to, and I know they never open it. They just never open the link. So think about our time is finite, right? We're damn near volunteering at our high schools to coach track and field. Don't waste time on kids who aren't invested in it. Do your job, but I would say the return on investment is going to be the kids that are also invested in you. So I would say sneak up on that and be kind and gracious to yourself. This inevitably turns into, what do I do to fix this? Like I said, a progression, is my kids, once they are proficient at a progression, I'll let them do that. Oftentimes they're doing that before we even warm up. They get the throwing shoes on. I'm dealing with some administrative stuff. I'm yelling at Johnny for missing his 5th hour class and all the shit we have to do, also with our coaches' hats. But my really invested kids, they're out there doing a real progression before we even get the implements out of the sheds, part of their warm-up. That's a progression. If you talk to them about, hey, we need to focus on the back of the ring, on the width of your sweep on the back, it's gotten really narrow. Let's widen that out. Why don't you pull the cone out and do some 360 drills out around that cone. Do 10 or 12, and then instead of 360s, let's go all the way to power. Stop at power position. 10 or 12 of those before we start practicing. The other thing is like 1+1s or 1+2s. I think I said this yesterday. Jim Aiken's a great coach at Illinois, high school coach, and he introduced this to me like 20 years ago. He's like, right, we do a throw, and then I tell them, this is the cue we're working on. I'll give them a drill specifically for that. They do the drill while they're waiting in line, and then before they take the next throw, they've done one drill to address the thing that we've talked about. 1+2s, 1+5s. Some of it depends on, do you have enough concrete near your circles? Some of it depends on how long the line is. And some of it depends on, hey, I really want to get some throwing reps in. Maybe the throws are more important than the drills. You've got to make that decision. I think same thing with like weight room stuff, prioritize throwing probably. Early in the season, drills are probably more necessary to address the things we see in video analysis. And at the end of the season, you're probably addressing it more in a full throw, if that makes sense. I'm good for yes, say good for no. Range throwing, typically we'll spend like Monday and Tuesday not trying to throw as far as possible, which is translated in various ways by our high school athletes, at least mine. But trying not to have them set the world record on Monday, while we're actually trying to maybe get some volume in, isn't necessarily a great thing. And so really talking them out of that and throwing kind of, hey, I want 10 full throws at 80%, and then we're going to do like a little drill session to address one cue, and then we're going to take 10 more throws. Maybe the last 3, let's get after it, something like that. You can also heavy or light. Heavy, maybe they feel the cue more, feel positions that they're missing, because you've got a heavier implement where you're slowing them down. Be careful with the discus. I would say like the 10% rule is probably don't go up or down 10%, much more than that. We can talk about heavy or light. That feels like another conversation another day. I have yet to erect it, but I have the poles and the sleeves already set in concrete in the ground, and we're going to put a throwing net up right next to our circles. I love rainy days in April where we have to go inside, and sometimes we don't get all the stuff out to set up throwing, and we throw into a wall. And sometimes that taking the kids right in the middle of the season away from seeing where the ball or discus lands is huge. Like, get them to feel what they're feeling rather than only looking at where it landed. Sometimes that can do a great thing. So having the net outside will allow me to say, fantastic, let's take those 10 reps into the net. I want you to think about I want you to think about slowing your head down. They can't see where the thing goes anymore, and so maybe you can feel the throw a little bit more. Talked about that already. We're not going to get into internal cues. I don't think we have time. I would love to spend the last 15 minutes answering any kinds of questions you have about anything at all. So I'm not going to get into this cueing stuff. But what do you got? Silence. Yeah. How do I set up practice? Okay. So I have a big group. During indoor season, we have 1 week where it's kind of, we can have the field house almost as long as we want, which is delightful. On week 2, softball and soccer starts. And so we have the field house from 4 until 5:30. So I have an hour and a half to do whatever I want to do, and then we get kicked out. Usually the second week, we will start splitting our group into kind of more filed groups based on sometimes older, younger groups, sometimes guys, girls. So we have all sorts of different kind of rotations of splitting the group. But then we'll start weight room, throwing. I can give a smaller group more specific attention. And then we'll flip-flop. Usually my older kids throw first and lift last on my younger kids. Let's be honest, I don't know how big of an impact it is. They're more tired, but they're learning so many things that the technical parts of it maybe break down a little bit because they lift first, but it's just the way we do it. Typically, I will have stations where we're throwing into a wall for 1 station, we're throwing out of a circle at 2 stations. And so the wall is basically depends on how many groups are still inside. Sometimes the sprinters go outside early. Distance, I don't know what they do. Just disappear. They just disappear, and then they come back. I don't know. But depending on how much wall space we have, we'll set up a whole bunch of stations at the wall and then rotate so kids can get into a circle. We have a batting cage that we throw into early on, but that's on the court right next to. We have 4 courts in our field house. I have 1 court because I have like a quarter of the 250 kids, so I don't feel bad about clogging up a whole court. The batting cage is like in between court 1 and 2, so even though it's not on court 2, it kind of gets into that distance. So we don't get to throw discus in the batting cage all the time, and that's when we use like power balls and discus balls and stuff like that. Once we get to outdoor season, and the indoor season, we lift 4 days a week. Outdoor season, we lift 3 days a week. And we go half and half. Those 3 days, weight room, throw, or throw weight room, 1 event. The other 2 days of the week, we will emphasize a throw and spend the bulk on it, and we might drill the other events. So we'll have 2 days a week where we kind of sometimes do 2 events. But usually one of those non-weight room days is also a meet day, like it's a dual meet. Sometimes varsity doesn't go to that, so they're throwing their events. JV kids are gone. Saturday mornings, I invite only my varsity kids, and anyone who's interested is optional. And sometimes those younger kids, that's when you start seeing the kids that are really kind of become the kids, because they're identifying themselves as passionate and interested. So yeah, generally speaking, there's a warm-up, brief. There's a drill progression that they usually do on their own once they're proficient. We split the group. 3 days a week, 1 event. 2 days a week, 1 and a second event adjacent, kind of. Maybe we'll do 10 of the other throw, or just drills of the other throw. I don't love throwing both events on each day, but sometimes you have to do that because you just don't get the volume out of it. Is that general? That's very general, but other questions? Yeah.
How do you approach psychology? So like I have a couple of very, very strong, capable athletes, but they just don't fire up or they don't believe that they can, and like they're stuck in a plateau. I have 2 of them right now.
I have like a 3-foot length of 2x4. It says the convincer in quotes. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm like, I can try, but I don't think that'll work.
You know, the more and more, and one of the things I've learned really interestingly through the podcast is we get into these really in-depth conversations with some athletes, and they identify some of the mental unlocking parts throughout their career that allowed them to get to the other side of some sort of plateau. And it seemed to be a really huge consistent theme. We have more and more athletes using kind of sports psychology or sports psychologists or theories of like mental, like pre-visualization, meet visualization, meditation, positive self-talk. I think that we probably undercoach that stuff and we undertrain that stuff. We're really focused on the physical part of it. But let's be honest, I think that 90% of the kids of mine that have probably been top end successful are also pretty mentally solid. I was going to say stable, but that seemed like a wrong word. I think yesterday, or this morning, in the glide presentation, I said, who should rotate or who should glide? I think there's got to be some mental agility, and there has to be some kind of intestinal fortitude that I think is tied to kind of that mental part of it. A lot of positive encouragement. I feel like so often, I think Aaron and I were talking about it, sometimes we're the sports psychologists that we presume we have to be is sometimes more important than not, and Paul is more expert than I am, but I think it's so true that kids, we need to probably focus more on that part of what we do. I've had kids where, some invested kids where they'll stay after and we'll do some mental visualization. We'll write down goals. We'll tie that to kind of like, what did that throw feel like? And can you see that sometimes when we're doing like finishing core, stretching at the end, you know, I'll do something like that, where just have them close their eyes and like, hey, think about your best throw today. Can you see that throw? You know, what went well about it? Or what did you hear from Coach Bennett? Or what did you hear from me today that you want to think about, you know, as we finish practicing and move on to homework? And can we bring that back to practice tomorrow? Be intentional about it. Because that's a big you know, it's a gigantic puzzle. It's like a 1,000-piece puzzle. And, you know, we're there part-time. So, you know, a lot of times we're building the puzzle, we don't have the box covered. But we gotta do the best we can. That's an unfair answer, but a great question.
During full throws in a ring, how many, specifically for discus, how many throws will you have an athlete take kind of in one ring session before cycling out the next one? And how little coaching do you do between each individual throw?
I do a lot of coaching in between individual throws. Oh, this is the wrong presentation. So maybe we're doing 10 to 20 drills. This is probably our progression. They're doing that on their own early on. We're doing 5 to 10 stand throws. Once we're into the bulk of the season, it's a lot closer to 5, or sometimes even less than 5. But early on, and then hopefully we're getting maybe 15 to 20 full throws in. Aaron and I were talking about this yesterday.
We had some great conversations.
Yeah, I love the conversation we get to have between sessions, so pretty pleased if you guys want to sit around and chat about it. I probably some people would view me as overcoaching kids at meets. I'm probably reinforcing a cue in between every throw, especially early in the season. By the state meet, you heard me on that video of Olivia, or maybe you didn't hear the audio, I just said, compete. That's what I said right before she got in the ring. Let's compete. That was my cue. Okay? There are kids who don't want to hear a goddamn thing. There are kids who need, hey, don't forget, we're going to really try to slow down the back half and get after it. Or they need to hear left arm block, left arm block. I'm okay saying that thing. I know there's coaches like, at the meet, the kids should know it already. And I'm like, do they really? We've spent 2 months out of them. They're multi-sport athletes. I'm trying to get as many moments that I can give them feedback if they can handle it. And I say keep cues down to like 1 at a meet. At a practice, you know, we can cue jump, you know, see egregious thing and they do something crazy. You know, you could just chase your tail all the time giving them 1,000 cues at a practice. Narrow it down to what you want to get done that day. Try to cue it into 1 or 2, but probably even stay at 1 at practice. But feel free to cue it. Hey, that was better. Doesn't necessarily need to be the cue. Maybe it's the, hey, that was a little better than last time. I really liked how you did this. Try to keep cues on what they need to do rather than what they just did, right? You drop your left arm again, no shit, okay? So, hey, you know what? I want you to throw that arm up over the tree line up there. Give them something to do rather than tisk them for doing the thing that you don't want them to do. You're gonna get a better reaction. So, not only is it how many cues are you using, but how your cues sound. I skipped those slides in the effort of getting to a question, so I'm glad you asked that. Other questions? Yeah.
As you get a freshman all the way to senior year, over the years, have you gotten an expectation of improvement from freshman to sophomore year, average feet for discus and shot?
Discus is so hard. I'm a big fan of discus averages rather than PRs because I think wind and other circumstances play with the discus so much. Kid has a 15-foot PR and a perfect, you know, right quartering winds, and the next day they get a tailwind and it's rainy, and they think they're the worst thrower, but that day they were more technically sound than the day that went really far. So what is their average? I would say I'm looking for, I don't know, 10 to 20 feet in year to year, maybe, for a high school kid. And then you think, well, that's 4 years, that's 80 feet. Well, no, it's 3 years. Their first year is their baseline, second year, third year. In the shot, I would say 3 to 4 is like, that would be a great basement, and sometimes I've seen more than that.
Different from male and female.
Probably the the same. Obviously, the girls are going to not have the variation on it because the top end throw is shorter than what the top end guys are. So yeah, I would say 3 to 4 is awesome, maybe 3 to 5, and maybe girls 3 to 4, and guys 4 to 5 if we wanted to get into it. I don't necessarily put it on that scale. You know, I had a kid who PR'd 7 feet 2 inches his first 3 years, or 2 years, and then at the state meet, he was like 9 inches away from another 7 foot 2 inch PR, and he didn't get it. He was super disappointed. I was like, he just made up this arbitrary thing that he could possibly PR the same amount 3 years in a row. I was like, that would be cool, right? But kids are so different. It's good to have those parameters and say, hey, this is what you should be working for. I think more so than maybe the goal of the top end thing, besides average, is doing the work in the weight room and putting in the reps and say, hey, you know, last year you never had your shoes on first and we're doing your progressions. Hey, I bet you if you did that, you know, 3 out of 5 days a week, we might improve 3 to 5 feet. So tie it to something, and I think that they got a little piece of cheese they want to go chase after.
And kind of going off of that, do you set like specific goals for each of your athletes, or?
I have them set goals, but usually at the top end, I'm definitely consulting. So like Olivia, I sent her that video. She was like a college kind of bound kid who wanted to throw in college, and so actually me and her parents went out and we had dinner, talked about college stuff, and then we did this like goal thing, like, hey, here's who's coming back next year, here, you know, where you are in like the school record list, what do you think is possible? Give them agency instead of you giving them the number, but also I think you need to be there to put, you know, the bumpers on the bowling alley if they're not ready to throw that shit down the middle. So don't let them say, hey, next year my PR is 180, and it's like, well, you threw 90 this year, so that would be great. That would be great. What's up, Amy?
You said so like at like a state meet, like almost a vast majority of the field could be kids you coach from club competing against the kids you coach at your actual high school. When they get into season and they start working with like their high school coaches, do you fully step away and like hand them off, or do they come to you in situations like that?
Yeah, great question.
Turn the knife a little more, but that's good.
So Davis Groskis is the UW Badgers coach, and Dave and I have known each other for a really long time. When Dave got the UW Badger job, he came from Southern Illinois, Edwardsville. And I think I was maybe the first person who made like his office phone ring. I was just like, hey, I'm Joe Rentier, and I do this, and welcome to Madison, and blah, blah, blah. And then he called me like a week later, because I think he probably like looked me up and then found out that I had some kids he probably should be recruiting. And we've been friends ever since. But I think like maybe Dave's like 3rd year or something like that. He came to the state meet and he watches, and you know, we've had like club years where we like swept the whole podium 1 through 6 multiple times. It was just pretty fun. I'm coaching my own kids, and then a lot of the coaches, I'm friends with the coaches. Sometimes the coaches coach for me in club. And so I'm literally standing there, and kids like are cycling past us after they shag to get feedback from the peanut gallery. Usually what I do at the state meet, and there are coaches where there's boundaries and there's coaches where we're just like super buddies, I will try to be like, and absolutely just let them do their thing. And other times they're like a frantic mess because it's maybe the first kid they've had at state, and I have had the opportunity to have a lot of kids at state, and they're like, they should change this, and they should this, and then I'll just like be like, just have them focus on slowing down their head. And then I'll step back, and then the kid comes up, and they're like, that was so awesome, but you should really slow down your head, and then the kid goes back in line. Anyway, like 4 years, 5 years, Dave comes to the state meet, and he sees that interaction, and he says, how the fuck do you get away with that? That was his only thing that he said. And a lot of goodwill, I think. I come from a place, and I think Aaron said at the beginning of the first session today, and I tried to echo it. I have a lot, I think, of good graces, because almost everyone in the state knows that I just want to see everyone throw far. I think the biggest problem, and once in a while, like I've rubbed a coach the wrong way, and sometimes I think it's ego, and I'm like, I'm so sorry you feel that way. You know, like, I better, and hands off New Year's season, he's your kid, absolutely. I'm hoping we're collaborating. I'm 9 months and you're 3 months. You're on the right track. This is what I saw. Have at it. There's one kid at my school that was pissed off that I have helped all these other kids. To which I said to her, I said, you know what? I've learned so much from all the kids that I've coached that some of the things that I've taught you, I learned from other kids. And so even though you have to compete against some of these other kids that I've coached and maybe made better, you're better because I got to coach them. And I don't know that she bought into that sale, but it's true. I mean, it's absolutely 100% true. I've learned more things from kids and figuring out how to solve their challenges than I have from, me talking to you. You're going to learn something from your group this year that I can't provide for you in this or this contract. It's a super slippery slope, but above board, I think everyone knows what my intention is, and then I just try to make sure that I'm not overriding someone else's needs to feel that, because I don't need it at this point. I've been so dumb lucky to have these kids come through, and that I don't need any of the things. Just awesome, you did such a great job, and I don't want any of that. But it's hard because I think there are feelings involved.
Can I jump in quick, Joe?
Yeah.
Speaking to that, Maggie, I like to have conversations with the coach prior to the big meet, so everybody knows what the expectation is. And I just say, I'm going to stand back. If you need help, you come to me. Much like you and your coaches, I'm sure. If everything is going good, you're not going to go over there and get an extra cue that might screw something up. You're just going to leave it alone. So I let them know I'm here if you need me. If you don't need me, that's great too.
Yeah, I think anyone who's seen this, the coach that comes and tells you what your kids are doing wrong at the meet, you want to punch them in the face. I don't want to be that person. So I think I get away with a lot of putting out good mojo instead of any of that bad mojo. And so I don't know. I hope I stay in the green and not get into even the yellow or the red. 2 cues for a kid from 2 different people, not so counterproductive even if it comes from a good place. And so steering way clear of that is essential. Somebody else? Sweet. If you have individual questions, please don't hesitate to ask. If you've got questions during the season, MadisonThrowsClub@gmail.com. I get to that pretty frequently. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.